What's up, everyone? This is Kazak here, and today this is my very first game review on this channel, and it'll be about the recently released Monster Hunter Wilds. For those who don't know, I absolutely love the Monster Hunter franchise. My first experience with the series started off with playing a Japanese copy of Monster Hunter 3rd Portable on the PlayStation 3, and while I didn't understand a lick of Japanese back then, I still poured in many hours playing this game alongside my brothers and friends. Since then, I have went on my way to play a good portion of the games, and I love a good chunk of them. Now we're here with the newest entry in the series, and you're probably wondering if this game is worth trying out. Well, let's not waste any more time and find out. First off, let's talk about the story. It all basically starts with a young boy named Nada who is found unconscious after running away from home because of a monster known as the White Wraith attacking his village. From there, our hunter, Gemma, and the best girl Alma basically go on a journey to find Nada's home and learn more about the history behind his people and their White Wraith. Now, if that summary of the story seems a little basic to you, well, that's because it is. To be honest, the Monster Hunter series has never really focused much on story. In the past games, it's always been about the hunt. You pop in the game, do a few menial tasks, and then before you know it, you're fighting a Rathalos, then a Zenogre, and then you're fighting an elder monster like the Teostra. Wilds is more narratively driven than any other game in the series, as you can see with all the new cutscenes, voice acting, and all that. It basically takes what World did and upped the quality of the story presentation. However, it really doesn't matter much to me because, quite frankly, I don't care about the story. Sure, some characters have their moments, but that's just it, moments. And because the story itself is really short, you basically forget all about them after you beat the game, where you can focus freely on hunting down monsters. Hell, I couldn't even tell you what World or Rise's narrative is about because I just don't care that much about story in my Monster Hunter games. That might sound ironic coming from a JRPG enthusiast, and don't get me wrong, I do enjoy learning about the lore behind the Monster Hunter games regarding the environments, the monsters' origins, and all that, but again, Monster Hunter's strong suit is not the story campaigns. I just find myself wanting to skip the annoyingly long cutscenes so I can get to the next monster because that's where all the fun is at. This was the same issue that I had with World and it's still prevalent here. However, one thing that I do enjoy about the story is that your character can actually speak in cutscenes, which is super cool because it does help immerse yourself into the game. Honestly, this is something that I wish other games would put more effort into instead of just having your character being a complete mute. At most, the story is just okay. It has a slightly better presentation than Worlds, and it gets the job done for those who want to know more about the actual world of Wilds, pun not intended. However, if you're looking for a big engaging narrative, you're not going to find that here with the Monster Hunter games. Despite what the producer of the game says, this is not the selling point of the game. Okay, now that we covered that, let's talk about the gameplay, and oh boy, there's a lot to discuss here. Now let me just say that the combat in Wilds is awesome. Weapons have more options than ever, and everything is more convenient now since you have different ways to tackle certain monsters by mounting them, hitting their weaknesses, or countering it to knock the monster down, which is pretty satisfying to do. A new mechanic that's introduced is called the Focus Strikes, which zooms in on the monster, and you can specifically hit any open wounds indicated by the red marks on his body. This is pretty helpful in knocking down monsters or acquiring their parts easier. You can even swap between two different weapons on the fly, so you can experiment with a new weapon that you probably never tried before, or pick the ones that you enjoy most. My personal favorite weapons to play around with is the Switch Axe, which has two different modes between the axe and a sword mode that you can charge up to do more damage. Then there's the Giant Sword, which is very slow, but it can do some very devastating charge attacks that hits very, very hard. Even now, each game always had a pretty simple formula of finding the location of the monster, fight it, kill it, carve out its materials, make new weapons and armor. It's still incredibly addicting to see a cool armor or weapon set and getting the incentive to do multiple runs against them. Especially now you're given more ways to customize your armor sets by mixing and matching different parts, which is pretty cool. What's also awesome is that all the areas in the game are entirely connected to each other, meaning that you don't have to wait through load times when you enter a new area, so you can freely explore to your heart's content and initiate quests just by attacking monsters. On top of that, you also have NPC party members that will help fight all monsters with you if you fire off an SOS flare. Speaking of party members, just like in other Monster Hunter games, you can have your online friends play with you during hunts. And the net play overall is pretty good for the most part, but I do think that the setup when it comes to joining with your friends is weirdly convoluted because the game doesn't really explain how to connect with your friends, and it just expects you to figure it out. It also doesn't help that the game has so many menus that it's hard to navigate through. The gameplay at its core is very solid, and honestly to me, it has the best modern Monster Hunter combat in the entire series, without a doubt. However, that doesn't mean there aren't a few cons I have with it. Now, Monster Hunter Wilds has greatly improved the flow of gameplay and made everything convenient, which is great. But the issue I have here is that the game is so accommodating and it does a lot of things for the player that the overall challenge of the game feels watered down in my opinion. Now, that might be because of my experience with the Monster Hunter games over the years, so people who have probably just started probably won't share this perspective. But in their pursuit of making the game more accessible, the game can feel a little too handholdy at times during the story campaign. Like in the older games, you had to manually start off doing medial tasks like getting materials around the map, learn your surroundings, and throw paintballs to keep track of monsters on foot. While some would consider this to be pretty tedious, it still incentivized exploration and made you put in some effort into taking the time to prepare for hunts, which you can still do in Wilds, but now you can traverse areas much faster thanks to the Sacred that you can ride. Not only that, but it can even store additional items and the map shows the entire location of the area. Now, I do acknowledge that this game is heavily catered to newcomers that are jumping into the game, which is perfectly fine, and there's nothing wrong with making quality of life improvements. In fact, there's still a great amount of those adjustments that actually does help make the experience feel better, like having infinite whetstones to use at any point, fast traveling, and different campsites for different parts of the area. I just feel that the excessive amount of accessibility here takes away the incentive to go exploring on your own, because almost everything is done for you. In my opinion, the massive push for accessibility feels like a double-edged sword here, and I imagine that veteran fans may likely feel the same. Then of course there's also the performance issues going on. Now a lot of the issues come from the PC version, and I'm playing the game on the PlayStation 5 in performance mode at 60 frames per second. And I haven't come across any major issues outside of the textures not always looking the best, but I'm not really bothered by that. As long as I can enjoy the game at a comfortable frame rate, I don't really care too much, but the optimization can definitely use some work on PC. It's not unplayable, but it is rough right now, so if you're going to play it, then I can at least recommend the console versions as an alternative. Moving on from that, let's actually take a moment to talk about the monsters in the game, because they are so damn cool. Like the fire monkey Ajarkon is extremely aggressive and uses its upper body to drag itself across the ground, or jump super high in the air to strike down like a meteorite. Another new monster, the Ray Dow, has an absolutely badass fight with a bunch of lightning striking down all over the place and can shoot out a big ass lightning beam too. There's even a crazy squid monster that puts itself on fire and won't hesitate to grab you with its nasty tentacles. Wilds has some really awesome fights and set pieces that not only look amazing, but the monsters themselves are incredibly fun to fight against, and they always keep me on my toes while I try to recognize their patterns. One of the biggest things I appreciate about this game too is the amazing looking environments and how the monsters move around in their respective habitats. It makes the places that you traverse in feel like it's brimming with so much life, especially with the different weather changes which affects what monsters will appear throughout the day. It's really cool stuff, man. Now, after you beat the main story, this is where the game does begin to open itself up a bit. Once you get to this point in the game, more options become available to you, more new monsters appear, and the quests become even more challenging. Everything up to this point is just so you can become accustomed to how the game works, and now the world is your oyster. You can do investigations on any monsters that you see out in the wild and hunt them for an even better set of armor, talismans, and weapons to craft. One of the most notable high-rank features is the Artisan weapons, where you can essentially create your own weapon of choosing to apply different stats, elements, and abilities to it. You earn materials to build them by fighting tempered monsters, which are far more aggressive than their regular counterparts. The system itself is a little complicated to fully explain in extreme details, but it's an interesting mechanic that allows you to do so much more with your weapons than you normally could. Now, when it comes to the comparison between World and Wilds, it's still a little early for me to say which one is better, but based on my own personal experiences so far, I still enjoy World slightly more because I felt like it was able to balance its accessibility pretty well without compromising the challenge, especially when you get to high rank. However, Wilds also improve upon the gameplay to feel more fresh, and it's a lot quicker in getting you straight into the monster hunting action without needing to go through a load time or only accepting quests in the main camp. If I had to compare this game to both of the main modern games like World and Rise at the vanilla states, Rise would rank at a third place, Wilds is at second, and World would be at first place. Now, if you're somebody who has never played a Monster Hunter game before, you're probably wondering if Wilds is a good start. I can definitely say that you should definitely start with this game. It does a lot to help out beginners understand the gameplay and all the essential elements of it like crafting, healing, building new weapons, how to fight against different monsters, and etc. Now, if you're a longtime fan of the series like me, then you more than likely have already bought the game and poured in 100 plus hours into it already. Overall, despite some of my critiques on the game, Monster Hunter Wilds is still a pretty fantastic game that has an amazing combat system, beautiful environments to explore, and a bunch of badass new monsters to hunt. And of course, you get to pet the adorable little Poogie as always. For my final ranking, I'm going to give this game a solid 8 out of 10. Now, I will say that for as much as I enjoyed the game personally, they could certainly do more to improve upon things like the PC performance and keep up with the consistent updates that will benefit the endgame. I also believe that it's important that Capcom listens to most of the constructive criticism about the game and address them properly whenever we do get more of these updates, because Wilds does feel lacking in some areas. However, I have no doubt that it has the potential to become even more amazing down the line, especially with the eventual expansion that will probably come at some point. Feel free to let me know what you guys think about the game in the comments and whether or not you agree or disagree with me. With all that said, this was Kazak, and I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Peace out.